Or anyone else who's not enjoying themselves as well. Thanks for being here. I feel like I should say something just because the material is kind of weird, and maybe it'd be better if I said something beforehand. So, the first piece that we did, if you were here before we stopped playing, was supposed to be like a big kind of Western thing. So that was the first set, and now this set, basically the whole set that we're doing tonight is kind of based around like storytelling a little bit. So now this set, we're going to read stories and kind of play behind them. And then the third set that we'll do after we take another break will be some random duets amongst the members. So thanks for coming, and hope you enjoy the rest of our set. Thanks.
The story is called Secret Agent Splat by Rob Scott, as read by me.
We've only been doing this for, since about March now.
Splat's dad makes toy ducks.
5 months.
All colors, all sizes. He makes a lot of ducks. The ducks are kept in the garden shed, and Splat has names for each and every one. John, Paul, Ringo, and George. Real original. One day Splat was shocked to see that the red duck was missing! Who messed with my ducks, asked Splat? Seymour shrugged. The next day, the blue duck was missing and the red duck was back! But without a beak! Who messed with my ducks, asked Splat? Seymour shrugged. The day after that, the green duck was missing and the blue duck was back. Again without a beak! It was time to investigate! Who messed with my ducks, asked Splat? Not me, said his mom. Not me, said little sis. Not me, said his brother. It seems that no one has messed with my ducks. Not anyone? Not anybody? Nobody, said Splat. I must find this Mr. Nobody. Splat watched his favorite TV show and made his plans. If my plan is to work, said Splat, I must be clever, cunning, and quick. I will find this Mr. Nobody and solve the mystery of the missing ducks! This is a job for Secret Agent Splat! C. Miller, codenamed S, gave him his spy kit. A camera, some baking flour, a flashlight, a book of paw prints, and a top secret gizmo. Secret Agent Splat put his plan into action. He set his traps and waited. It was quiet. Too quiet. Suddenly, there was a flash of light! Secret Agent Splat raced to the scene! His trap had been sprung. The camera had taken a photo. Splat looked closely at the photo. Aha! Here ears, explained Splat. Huh, very familiar ears. Splat looked at the flour he had sprinkled on the floor. Aha! Paw prints, explained Splat. Huh, very familiar paw prints. Splat followed the paw prints from his shed, along to a track to another shed. Mr. Nobody's hideout, whispered Splat. Splat tiptoed up to the door and pulled out his top secret gizmo. He pressed the latch, flung the door open, and leaped inside. Gotcha! Splat cried. Bright yellow eyes stared from the shadow. So, Secret Agent Splat, you found me, replied a mysterious voice. Aha! A mysterious voice, thought Splat. Huh. A very mysterious voice. Splat shone his flashlight. He gasped. It was Spike! Spike! So you're Mr. Nobody! Spike turned to run. Splat pressed a button and released his top secret gizmo. Boing! Went the gizmo and Spike fell to the floor. Splat sat on him. Why, Spike? Splat asked. Why did you mess with my ducks? At that moment, a mouse ran past carrying another duck. That's strange, said Splat. Ah, Spike said. Not another one. The mouse ran into the small hole. With a thunk, the duck's beak was knocked off as it struck the wall. Splat looked into the hole. The mouse was having a cup of tea with the duck. I asked the mouse not to take the ducks, but he didn't listen, said Spike. And since I don't want him to get in trouble, I've been returning the ducks. Now I see, said Splat. But why did the mouse take my ducks? Splat thought a while. Huh. Maybe it's not really a duck that he wants, said Splat. Splat whispered to Seymour. Seymour nodded. Maybe it's a friend! The case of the missing ducks was solved. The Fantastic Flying Books of Mr. Morris Lesmore by William Joyce. Illustrated by William Joyce and Joe Balloon. Morris Lesmore loved books. He loved stories. He loved books. His life was a book of his own writing, one orderly page after another. He would open it every morning and write in his joys and sorrows, of all that he knew and everything that he hoped for. But every story has its upsets. One day the sky darkened and the winds blew and blew. So everything Morris knew was scattered, even the words of his books. or which way to go. So he began to wander and wander. Then a happy bit of happenstance came his way. Rather than looking down as he had become his habit, Morris Lesmore looked up. Drifting to the sky above him, Morris saw a lovely lady. She was being pulled along by a festive squadron of flying books. Morris wondered if his book could fly, but it couldn't. It would only fall to the ground with a depressing thud. The flying lady knew Morris simply needed a good story, so she sent him her favorite. The book was an amiable fellow and urged Morris to follow him. The book led him to an extraordinary building where many books apparently nested. Morris slowly walked inside and discovered the most mysterious and inviting room he had ever seen. It was filled with the fluttering of countless pages, and Morris could hear the faint chatter of 1,000 different stories, as if each book was whispering an invitation to an adventure. His new friend flew up to him and landed on his arm. It held itself open, as if hoping to be read. The room rustled to life, and so Morris's life among the books began.
Very much in training from the October 14th.
Morris tried to keep the books in some sort of order, but they always mixed themselves up. The tragedies needed cheering up and would visit with the comedies. The encyclopedias, weary of the facts, would relax with the comic books and fictions. All of it was an agreeable jumble. Morris found great satisfaction in caring for the books, gently fixing those with fragile bindings and unfolding the dog-eared pages of others. Sometimes Morris would become lost in a book and scarcely emerge for days. Morris liked to share the books with others. Sometimes it was a favorite that everyone loved, and other times he found a lonely little volume whose tale was seldom told. Everyone's story mattered, said Morris, and all the books agreed. At night, after all the stories that needed telling had been told and everyone had settled down into their proper places on the shelves, the great big dictionary would get in the last word. It was then that Morris Lesmore would once again write in his own book. He wrote of his joys and sorrows, of all that he knew and everything that he hoped for. The days passed. So did the months. And then years and years. And Morris Lesmore became stooped and crinkly. But the books never changed. Their stories stayed the same. Now his old friends took care of him the way he had once cared for them, and they read themselves to him each night. Then one day he filled the last page of his book. He looked up and said with a bittersweet sigh, "I guess it's time for me to move on." The books were sorry, but they understood. Morris put his hat and took his cane and he went to the door. He turned and smiled, then waved goodbye. "I'll carry you all in here," he said, and pointed to his heart. The books waved their pages, and Morris Lesmore flew away. And as he flew, he changed back to the way he'd been that long ago day when they first all met. The books were quiet for a while. Then they noticed that Morris Lesmore had left something behind. "It's his book," said his oldest friend. Inside was Morris's story, of all his joys and sorrows, all that he knew, and everything that he'd hoped for. Then the books heard a small, expectant sound. There in the doorway was a little girl. She looked around with wonder. Then something fantastic happened. Morris Lesmore's book flew up to her and opened its pages. The girl began to read. And so our story ends as it began. With the opening of a book.
That's fair.
This is the story of Ferdinand the Bull. Ever heard of it? Once upon a time in Spain, there was a little bull, and his name was Ferdinand. All the other little bulls he lived with would run and jump and butt their heads together. But not Ferdinand. He liked to sit just quietly and smell the flowers. He had a favorite spot out in the pasture under the cork tree. favorite tree, and he would sit in shade all day and smell the flowers. Sometimes his mother, who was a cow, would worry about him. She was afraid he'd be lonesome all by himself. "Why don't you run and play with the other little bulls and skip and butt your heads," she would say. But Ferdinand would shake his head. "I like it better where I can just sit here quietly and smell the flowers." His mother saw that he was not lonesome, and because she was an understanding mother, even though she was a cow, she let him just sit there and be happy. As the years went by, Ferdinand grew and grew until he was very big and strong. All the other bulls who had grown up with him in the same pasture would fight each other all day. They would butt each other and stick each other with their horns. What they wanted most of all was to be picked to fight at all the bullfights in Madrid. But not Ferdinand. He still liked to just sit quietly under the cork tree and smell the flowers. One day, 5 men came in funny hats to pick the biggest, fastest, roughest bull to fight in the bullfights in Madrid. All the other bulls ran around snorting and butting, leaping and jumping, so the men would think that they were very, very strong and fierce, and then they would kick them. Ferdinand knew that they wouldn't pick him, and he didn't care. So he went out to his favorite cork tree to sit down. He didn't look where he was sitting, and instead of sitting on the nice cool grass in the shade, he sat on a bumblebee. Well, if you were a bumblebee and a bull sat on you, what would you do? You would sing. And that's just what this big bee did to Ferdinand. Wow, did it hurt? Ferdinand jumped up with a snort. He ran around puffing and snorting, butting and pawing, as if he was crazy. The 5 men saw him and they all shouted with joy. Here was the largest and fiercest bull of them all. Just the one for the bullfights in Madrid. So they took him away for the bullfight in a cart. What a day it was. Flags were flying, Bands were playing, and all the lovely ladies had flowers in their hair. They had a parade into the bowl ring. First came the bandoleros, with a long, sharp men with ribbons on them to stick in the bowl and make them mad. Make them mad. Next came the picadores, who rode skinny horses, and they had long spears to stick in the bowl and make him madder. Then came the matador, the proudest of them all. He thought he was very handsome and bowed to the ladies. He had a red cape and a sword and was supposed to stick the bowl last of all. Then came the bowl. And you know who that was, don't you? Ferdinand! They called him Ferdinand the Fierce, and all the bandoleros were afraid of him, and the picadores were afraid of him, and the matador was scared stiff. Ferdinand ran into the middle of the ring, and everyone shouted and clapped because they thought he was going to fight fiercely and butt, snort, and stick his horns around. But not Ferdinand. When he got to the middle of the ring, he saw the flowers in all the lovely ladies' hair, and he just sat down quietly and smelled. He wouldn't fight and be fierce no matter what they did. He just sat and smelled. And the bandoleros were mad, and the picadores were madder, and the matador was so mad that he cried because he couldn't show off his cape and sword. So they had to take Ferdinand home. And for all I know, he's sitting there still, under his favorite cork tree, smelling the flowers just quietly. He's very happy. The end.
Country band.